Hi, everyone. Welcome. We'll wait for you all to get in. Please introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to know where you're at in your studies or in your job position. We have a beautiful panel for you today. Some wonderful educators from different backgrounds here, all to share about their experiences and provide advice to new educators and those on the pathway. So welcome to our teacher panel and to one of the final sessions of the Teach Los Angeles Regional Collaborative. We're so glad that you're here with us today. Oh, welcome, first semester. That's awesome. Thank you for joining us. I want to start with welcoming our wonderful panelists, most who just came from a long day of teaching and coordinating and mentoring to be here today. Why don't we get started with sharing for each panelist about our name, position, or grade, and where you work. So we'll start with Amy.
Hi, welcome everybody. My name's Amy Scanlon, and I am currently a special education teacher for Los Angeles Unified School District. I am teaching a TK to second grade autism core class, which generally speaking means that those were kids with usually autism eligibilities that were placed into my classroom, depending on their needs, usually small group, accommodations, academic goals. I also have a general education specialist or a general multiple subject credential as well. So I've taught general education elementary in addition to special ed.
Jackie.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jackie Rangel. I am a high school Spanish teacher at Lucerna High School. This is my 22nd year there. And before that, I taught for 4 years in Indianapolis, Indiana at a middle school. I teach Spanish, like I said. I'm a course lead, an advisor for 2 clubs, and also a mentor for 2 students at Rio Hondo Community College.
Awesome. Val?
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. My name is Valerie Huntley. I teach second grade in the Inglewood Unified School District. I've been teaching for 5 years. I've taught 2nd, 5th, and 6th, and I'm really stoked to be here with you guys. Thank you.
Catherine.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad to see everyone here, and I commend everyone who is learning to become one with this profession. It's very incredible. So I am a middle school specialist for a Jewish organization that writes curriculum, provides STEAM curriculum for Jewish schools in greater New York area and Los Angeles and Washington. We're a national organization. My job is to mentor teachers who are teaching STEM subjects in their classrooms, mainly middle school teachers, but I do also work with K through 5 and some high school teachers. And I also write curriculum for the programs that we provide for our schools.
That is awesome. And let's see, Elvia, are you here with us? Perhaps not yet. So excited. Just listening to all that you do is just so impressive and wonderful. We're so fortunate to learn from you today. We're going to jump in with a teacher pathway question. So we know that there's so many entry points to becoming an educator and so many ways that you can use your education background. So thinking about a student who's on their educational journey now, or as a current teacher and continuing with their lifelong learning path, what's something you wish you were better prepared for during your journey? Anyone can jump in and share, and I'll open the floor to you.
I can start since no one else is unmuting. I'm just going to go because I wrote it down. before. I came prepared. So there are some things that I wish I knew when stepping into the shoes of a teacher, because I did teach in the classroom before I became a teacher mentor. I think some of them are just understanding that differentiation is so incredibly important in the classroom, whether you're teaching in a private school or in a public school. Teaching kids writing skills, regardless of what you are teaching, math, science, the fact that it is important to be able to integrate multiple subjects into whatever subject you're teaching. But most important of all, I think, and now I'm seeing it more and more as I mentor teachers in the classroom, especially brand new teachers, is to be able to say, I am going to halt my teaching of a subject, of a concept, if a teacher or a student feels unsafe emotionally or physically in the classroom. That is something that no one prepares you for, and that is something that sometimes you just have to experience on your own skin, sometimes quite literally, that you need to stop what you're doing and address safety concerns in the classroom, and that's either emotional or physical. That was one thing that no one prepared me for.
Yeah, I'd like to add to what Catherine is saying. I wish I was better prepared to help struggling students by getting to know them better. Relationship building is so important, because we might think that a student is just not doing their work or just really doesn't care, but we don't know what kind of trauma they may be experiencing. So when you get to know them better, you have a better idea of their lived experiences and what is happening, and how interventions might help, or just social emotional learning, and just letting them know that you care can make a big difference in the classroom. So that's always really important, getting to know your students.
Also, I think there's something in all the preparation of all the years that you'll go to school for becoming a teacher. There's nothing like on the job experience. Your first year, you'll feel like you're not prepared enough. What do I do? Am I doing it the right way? So kind of walking in to the classroom your first year, just know that you'll never truly feel prepared enough. You can do all the over planning. You'll probably not get to half of it. Know that you'll need a plan A and a plan B, and that your lessons, as much as you prepare for it, they might not go the way you expected. So always kind of having that mentality of, what will I do if my kids are not understanding? What am I going to do? Because you don't want to walk in and just have it go to pieces. You know, you want to have backup plans. And also during your educational path, knowing that there's a lot of opportunities for different programs that might fit what your end goal is for teaching. So meeting with the counselors, really understanding what are your options, because you don't want to just go to school spinning your wheels and not be on the right path. And I think that's so important. I know for me, I got my general education credential separate, you know, like it wasn't connected to a master's program. Then I found out that there was back then a university internship. So then I found out about that and got my job hired in to get my special education credential with one I already had. Had I not known about that program, I could have missed a great opportunity. And then I got my master's separate. Now there's a lot of options too for built-in masters with a credential. So just being very, do a lot of these kind of things where you're finding out about different programs, reaching out, and really figuring out what you want to do and what the best path is that'll fit your time frame.
Yeah, and I want to add on to kind of little pieces of what everybody said. That what Amy was talking about with the planning, I agree with that too. Like like in college, you're just writing these like really intense lesson plans. And then I was like, okay, like it's going to go by the book, like by the script every day. And then like within the first hour, you're like it's so out of your control because one thing like sets off the whole plan. And I'm like a big planner. So that used to like really kind of freak me out because I would like stay up all night, like have the perfect lesson plan for the next day and be like, this is our schedule, it's going to be great. And then by like 8:30, it's already something threw it off. And so you just kind of have to be prepared in the sense of like planning, but also just more flexible, right? And be okay with like things kind of going off the plan every once in a while, or like based on what the kids need. I like what I believe it was Jackie talking about the relationship piece of it. Like, I've had a morning where I'm like, okay, we have to get this done. And then I have a kid come in and tell me, like, oh, their grandma just died and they're crying. And then all the other kids come and comfort them. And now we're like talking about loss and like our hearts being sad. And like, that's a teachable moment too. So, like, we're going to take a break from the reading because something real is like going down right, or happening here, you know? So I think that whole relationship piece of it really ties into, you kind of have to think like, what's most important here and like in this moment is that this kid feels loved and like supported by the classroom and all of our other friends that are in this room, and then we'll get to the plans and the academics later, but like right now we got to be here for these kids in this moment, you know? So just like the flexibility, but then also the importance of the relationships and like the community that you build too in the classroom is just super important.
It's the humanization of the classroom and the experience, right?
Exactly.
We're teaching humans, and we have needs and things that come up that need to be addressed first, right? We jump into that hierarchy of human needs, and so that's so important. I know one of our panelists is also here, and feel free to jump in, Elvia, if you have a response to our first question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Megan, for that. Hello, everyone. My name is Elvia Banuelos. I just joined, and I'm here from East Los Angeles College. I currently teach the child development and education courses, and I'm also a mentor and a collaborator of COIL. And the acronym COIL is a collaborative in inline and online international learning. And I hope to tell you a little bit more about that soon. But thank you for the invitation. I want to add to the question at hand with regards to what is something that you wish you were better prepared for during your educational journey. And I think some have already highlighted this, but I'd like to point out the importance of internships. I wish that during the course of my educational journey, I knew more about internships or work experience opportunities that were available so that I could begin to get more familiar with the classroom setting and classroom management, in addition to policies and procedures, as I later realized that depending on the educational programs that you become employed in, they have some differing policies and procedures, and also the implications of initiatives that also impact your teaching in some of these educational programs.
We have a question for you. What does COIL represent? What's it stand for?
Yes, COIL is the acronym that is used for collaborative, a collaborative in online international international learning. And COIL, furthermore, is a partnership, an online partnership with an international country. And in my case, the country of Brazil, in which I co-teach with another faculty member from the University of Sao Paulo. And students get to have opportunities that will enhance not only opportunities for opportunities for them to enhance some of the 21st century skills, but also get to learn more about the country of Brazil and work on projects collaboratively with students from Brazil, and in which they interact using technology, mostly video chat and Padlet. But I think most importantly in all of this is that students also get to experience different opinions. So I'm really excited for my students, and looking forward to their student learning outcomes in this project. This is a brand new project for me. And I must say that although the challenges exist, I'm getting back feedback from my students in some of the learning experiences that they've encountered, and I'm very pleased.
Wow, people are in the chat really into this new idea to us. Thank you for sharing, everyone. For our first question, let's kind of zoom in. So we started with learning about pathways and what we wish we could have grabbed along the way. Let's go to our first years of teaching. Anyone want to share their first years? Val, it was just a few years ago for you, right? How awesome, 5 years in.
Yeah. Yeah, this is my 5th year. So my first year was interesting because I got hired as an intervention teacher part-time. So I was only there part-time, like half of the day each day. And I would just do like small groups of intervention, which was really cool. I worked with primarily the 2nd grade team. So I would do small groups of intervention for the 3 or 4 hours that I was there each day. I really loved that because I really love small group instruction and like getting to know kids and their like abilities and struggles of like in a really detailed way. And so in small groups, you can really do that because you only have like 4 or 5 in front of you at a time, and then you're working on a very specific skill. And so I really loved intervention. So I did that from August till about March-ish. Well, no, January. And then for the spring semester, the school that I was in dissolved a split. So they had like a couple split classes and they dissolved it. And so then there was the 2nd grade class that had no teacher. And so I interviewed and got that position. So then I started teaching the 2nd grade class, which was kind of like a mix of the 1-2 split. So like half of a 2nd grade class plus like 4 kids from each of the other 2nd grade classes. It was so crazy. It was like just this crazy scrambled mix of 2nd graders. And then we kind of started fresh in January as if, it was like the first day of school again. So that was a little bit chaotic to say the least, but I learned a lot for sure. I learned a lot from both of those experiences, and it really like helped me as I got my, my own class again in 5th grade the following school year. So it was crazy, but in a good crazy, I guess.
Mm-hmm. If I may share my first year what my first year as a teacher was like. For some reason, every time I start the fall semester, I feel like it's my first year. Lots of excitement. I'm always thrilled to get acquainted with my new batch of students. And but when I think of my very first year as a teacher, I think about the excitement as well as some of the challenges that existed for me. Coming to realization that not all of my students were responsive. And I was conflicted because I thought I was prepared. I thought I was prepared to take on 6th grade, and only later realizing that there was further training on my part that was needed to best assist students who were English language learners, and as well as being able to teach some of our most special student populations. And so that immediately prompted me to go back to school and continue to take on additional courses and training so that I could best be able to address this student population. And the reason why I say that every fall semester feels like my first year as a teacher is because I always find new challenges. We have a new group of students, and every time there's a new group of students, as I become acquainted with them, I continue to innovate myself to try to reach them. And it's always exciting for me.
I want to really add to what Elvia was saying. I had to switch schools while I was still teaching. I had to switch schools 3 times. I started off with Teach for America in New York. They placed me in a charter school in Harlem. And needless to say, not only was I a first-year teacher, I was also doing my master's in education at the same time. Challenging does not quite begin to describe it. Between moving around New York City and going from school to learning myself and being in a school that it was in the 2nd year of their charter, teaching with a teacher who was not quite into teaching, who was supposed to be my mentor, but really wasn't, was challenging enough in itself. So that was my first year of teaching. After that first year of teaching, I decided to step away and finish my master's because I felt like I was not ready. And I needed to finish my master's without those interruptions, because I felt like if I continue in that path, I will quit teaching altogether and will hate it for the rest of my life, which I didn't want. Then we moved to California, and I found another school that was also challenging, where I learned a lot of lessons, but not fast enough. So I was laid off. And then I found another school. So every one of those first years was challenging. And I view it as, it doesn't matter how many years you've been teaching. Every time you start at a new school, it feels like the first year. It doesn't matter because you might not know the community, you might not know your administrators, you might not know the teachers you're going to be working with, you might not know the rules. Every first year at every school, just like starting every year with new teachers, with new students, might feel like you're being a first-year teacher. Starting at a new school will feel like a first-year teacher, and it's okay. And it's okay to fail, and it's okay to learn new lessons from every one of these years. And just understanding that the community, what you're looking for is a community that will support you. I think that's more important than anything else. And I also wanted to add that what we experienced in March of 2020 probably made all of us feel like a first-year teacher, because we needed to learn new skills. We needed to learn how to continue teaching, right? In a very, very new environment. So there's nothing wrong with being a first-year teacher at anything, but it will be challenging, no matter how you look at it.
Also, as a first-year teacher, more than likely you'll have a mentor or someone that will be assigned to you to kind of support you through the first year. Really don't feel bad about reaching out to that person for help. Some people I know say, oh, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to ask too many questions. You have to ask questions. You have to get that support from other teachers, not only to help your academic preparation, but also for your own mental health as well. You know, we talk a lot about the students' mental health, but yours is just as important. So getting a good team around you is so important. Reaching out to the other teachers, either in your grade level or departments, seeing what they're going through and kind of sharing stories will also help you in your first year as well. Because like we've been talking about, you're never really fully prepared. Because also every year, even if you're not moving schools, which is a whole nother thing, or even a change of grade level or program, you get new students every year. So even if you're in the same same class, you're still coming up with new challenges from year to year. So even sharing those stories with others kind of helps you, hearing what other people are going through, to kind of give you an idea of what would I do in that scenario, because this is all that you're building as like you know, those plan Bs that I talked about earlier. If this happens to me, what would I do? Okay, I would do this or this, you know, so that way in the moments, because we think fast on our feet, we don't have reflection in the moment, you know, we have to take care of everything and then reflect later. But you're always thinking about, okay, if this happens or if this happens, what would I have done, or what would I have done differently, especially as a new teacher or a new placement. Because things do come up that we never really think of. I always think, oh, nothing can surprise me anymore after all these years. Oh yeah, there's always surprises that come up, but you have to be creative in how you're going to handle it. So just kind of be aware of that at first year and every year after that, really, on kind of building a good team around you.
Sounds like flexibility and collaboration and grace are just part of the job description, right? Would anyone else like to share more about the first year?
Yeah, I'll add on that. And just to add something a little more practical is that when you're interviewing at the school that you want to be at or think you want to be at the end of the interview, they usually ask, are there any questions you have for us? One of the questions should be, yes, what does collaboration look like at your school? And that can tell you a lot. How do teachers collaborate? How do they collaborate in departments, school-wide, as far as different subject areas? It depends on what level you're at. But that's a really important question to ask school leaders. What does that look like? So don't forget to ask that when you're interviewing.
Yes, because we're interviewing for a job and we're interviewing them if they're the right fit for us, just like they're looking at us that way, right? That's a great tip too. Thank you. Let's now kind of zoom over to thinking about the pandemic that was referenced, right? What did you learn during the pandemic that's going to continue to stay with you? We know a lot of schools are back in person. Some may still be hybrid or online in some instances. So just curious, what are your silver linings from the pandemic and some things you are holding on to?
Oh my goodness, there are so many silver linings that I've found. For example, so because I'm mentoring teachers, and before I used to go to schools in person. So I would just go to the school and I would meet with the teacher in their classroom and I would talk to them and we would go through materials and we would go through preparing for classes and all of these things. And I would teach them because I'm a scientist in my previous life. So we would go through the science of the concepts, and I would probably be able to meet with 2 teachers, maybe 3 teachers at most every day. I'm able to fit 4 or 5 meetings every day now because I'm able to do it from my office or from my home to meet with teachers who need me. And I'm able to fit more meetings. So that is like number one, that I don't actually physically have to be. I have teachers who I'm mentoring who are in Washington State, in Arizona, in Houston, in New York. Before I would meet with them twice a year because I would only meet with them when I would go there. Yeah, and they would not expect me to meet with them over the phone, over the Zoom. I meet with them weekly now or bi-weekly. So needless to say, I'm able to help them a lot more. And how does it translate for teachers? I think that one of the biggest things that technology has provided us is comfort with technology and meeting with people over Zoom. How many times do you miss parents who are not at home meeting with them to talk about their child? It's not an excuse anymore. You don't know how to use Zoom? What are you talking about? Everybody knows how to use Zoom at this point, right? And if they don't, they better learn. Because if you are on a business trip somewhere else, you can jump on Zoom and meet and talk to me about your child because it's important, right? So that's one of the silver linings. The second one, and I think even more important than that, if a child is at home and they're not able to come, how many times do we have now the fact that a child maybe tested positive or somebody in the family tested positive and they're not able to come into school? Do they really have to miss school now? they don't. They can zoom in. And of course, their learning is not going to be compared to the one that they're that they're experiencing in the classroom, but at least they're not missing everything. So that inability to use technology before the pandemic is now no longer an excuse, because all of our kids know how to use technology now, we hope. Of course, there are outliers, but for the most part, 90% of our kids now know how to use technology and are able to use it. And we are able to say, here's the computer, open it up, don't miss school.
Yes, and access is increasing. It's still not there yet for everyone, but the awareness of the need for internet and all that is changing, right? Policies
and
are
just the
changing,
fact that,
funding.
just the fact that LAUSD is now under pressure to provide a computer for every single student.
Mhm.
They did not have that pressure before because they didn't need to.
Absolutely. What other silver linings or things are you holding on to?
I think sometimes it also teaches us, as scary as it was at the beginning, when it sounded so scary when everything was changing and we had to learn this and this, and and some people were kind of pushing back on it. Some people were gung-ho, some wanted to learn everything, but then some people were like, oh no, I'm not good at this. But we all have to keep learning. We all have to do stuff that's outside of our comfort zone, just like the students had to learn it. So really, as a teacher, you have to keep up with this stuff, because even as curriculums change, whether it's in person or we're talking about the change onto online on Zoom, things change constantly, and you have to be flexible to that. And not just think, oh, I'm not good at that, I don't want to learn that, I don't agree with that, it's not going to work for everyone. Because as much as we heard about all the failures of Zoom for the kids, there were so many successes too. Kids that were really progressing on it, even more so than in person, because there was less distractions. They were more zoomed in onto staring at the screen. There was mute. There was all kinds of behaviorally distracting things that were taken out of Zoom for some kids. So, I mean, we have to be open, as even when it's something that doesn't sound like it would work. We really have to be open and have an open mind. And when we come forth to our kids, we have to act like we're all really in this and excited about it, because they kind of feel from our standpoint. So you really have to pass that along no matter what the change is. You have to even put on even if it's a fake face for a moment and act really excited. Don't let the kids see that you're a little scared to it. Just say, we're all learning. We're going to be great at this, and kind of put forth that when things do change. And we're still doing parent conferences on Zoom. So actually, a lot of what we learned has carried over even for however long we're going to be able to use technology changes, I guess you could say. But there was some really good things that came out of it as well that we're going to continue using. So definitely some successes with this change.
I'd like to add something a little about technology and my findings. I had been infusing technology in my face-to-face classroom, and I thought I was pretty competent in doing so until the pandemic, and later realized that there was just so much more learning to be done. And I love technology, and I've been very busy trying to learn of so many new apps. My students, at first I thought I was part of the in crowd as I was using social media, and later only to learn my students tell me that Facebook is outdated and it's antiquated now in comparison to their new technical skills that they're now using. And so I quickly learned that there was definitely a need for me to continue to proceed and get the much necessary training. And I've also learned that although I assumed that my students all knew how to use technology, I came to recognize that they too needed to go through the process of learning how to use some of the technology tools that they needed in order to engage in collaborative groupings in their online classes. And another thing that was a true challenge for me, unlike in the face-to-face classroom setting, where you can provide differentiated instruction much easier, I came to realize that I was challenged in being able to provide that type of instruction in an online setting. And so I'm still working and developing my curriculum that addresses the needs of the diversity of my students in the classroom. So I will definitely be continuing to move forward with that.
Yeah, I tried to look for the good in it and did find it and stayed positive. So I teach Spanish, high school Spanish. And so some of the students I asked, because you have to look at your general population, ours mostly Latino, 77%. And you look at that and you say, well, maybe your family has a different way of saying that. Let's embrace that. Let's celebrate that. How do we do that? And they could put that in the chat, or instead of playing games with someone else, they could do that game or interview or something with someone at home. So they can really integrate who's home or teach this lesson to a sibling. And they can do that right then and there. But you also have to be careful of inclusivity. So there's those students that don't want to share things with their family. So then you can work with them in a chat room on your own. So there are so many ways that we have learned that I am still embracing from the pandemic and teaching with technology.
Thank you for sharing about your experiences. Any final silver linings to share from the group?
I have one more that I would like to share. This is something that we are still using as an organization that we have not had before. One, we're doing professional development online only at this point, still in the pandemic. And we are able to reach teachers across the country. Whereas before we had one professional development for all of our teachers in New York in person. And now, because we're doing everything online, we're also recording our professional development just like we're doing now. And teachers are able to view the presentations afterwards when they are not in the classroom teaching or taking their own classes. So I think that is something that no one was open to before. What do you mean recording sessions? What do you mean doing things online? That just wasn't done. Panel would be only in person, and then you would need permission for everybody to sign off on recording things and you appearing, on video. And now that's just how it is. So I think that is a huge silver lining, especially for teacher-mentor communication, that we are able to do more for the teacher community in general.
Awesome, such good stuff. So let's think about kind of persistence in the field and the pathway. Is there advice that's helped you the most to kind of not give up those make or break moments? We've talked about mentoring, we've talked about communication and support. Can you share a little bit zoomed in there? And then perhaps we'll take a pause and see if our audience has any questions about what we've spoken about so far. So you could start entering those in the chat if you have them.
I think first and foremost, every day is a new start. So if you felt down one day, like, oh, the lesson didn't go that well, or today was really busy and you were really hectic, you know what? Tomorrow's a new day. So reflect on things. What could you do differently? But just know that you can make your classroom however you want it to be the next day. And that's something that you have to just think about too. And if, after the year comes up or whatever, you think, oh, maybe this age group is not what I want to teach, you know what? You're not stuck in that. Like with special ed, I could teach everything up through high school. There's different special ed programs, there's resource, there's all kinds of options that what one option might be something I enjoy, not another person might not enjoy that type of of classroom. So you have a lot of flexibility, maybe, the subject you're teaching or something. Keep your options open with continuing education yourself, because the more credentials, the more certifications that you keep going to school and getting, that opens the door for so many more options that will keep you fresh within your career, so you don't feel burned out. I always say the more doors you can open within the field, the more happy you'll be, knowing that you're not just stuck in one particular setting. I know I've taught general ed and special ed, and just how many options that creates for me is a big difference. So all those years that you put in will give you that. Even if you don't use that option, just keep trying to go to school as much as you can for opportunities of different things you can teach, so you don't get burned out and then have to leave the field altogether, because there's a lot of options within the field.
I totally agree with Amy. I started 26 years ago, and as soon as I started, I did my master's and then I stopped. So here I am later in my last semester of PhD work, and I feel like a brand new teacher again, because I have a wealth of information and I cannot wait to help students and make a difference with all of this new information that I'm learning. So the more you learn, the more you extend yourself, the more options you will definitely have.
Congratulations on that step in your process. We have a follow-up about the burnout that Amy started talking about, and how, Jackie, you talked about keeping that training or education can reinvigorate you. Someone asked, what tips do we have for preventing burnout? And someone else asked, how much more education do you need if you have general ed but want to add special ed?
I'd like to add to the question in response to how do you prevent the burnout. And I'd like to say that being committed to the field of education and continuously innovate. There's always something more to be done and to provide students with opportunities. And just simply having a willingness to learn, listen to the feedback students give you, listen to the feedback from peers. But if you're constantly innovating, it will not only re-energize you, but it will also lead to new learning opportunities. And one of the best experiences for me, being in the field of teaching, has been the constant opportunity to learn from my peers as well.
I would say to,
And also,
oh,
sorry.
Go ahead, Amy. Oh, thank you. For the tips to prevent burnout, something I've really learned too the past couple years is to go home, like go home, like pick a time to go home and just go home, because like after school, my first couple years especially would just stay so late, like 5:30 or 6. You can just keep going and going and going. And I would really force myself, like, no, I have to stay, I have to get all this done. But then that was like causing me to just lose it by December, because my whole life is this job, right? And so I finally was like, I'm gonna go home by 4 o'clock, and that's my goal. No matter what I get done up until then, at 4 o'clock I have to go. And so I started doing that, and it's made like a total difference, because the to-do list never ends, is what I've noticed too. Like, I just always start adding more and more things that I want to do. Like, oh, I want to prep this, and I want to cut out these little shapes because that's going to be so cute tomorrow. And I want to, like, it never ends. So if you just pick a time, like say, okay, at 4 I'm going home, and then you just leave it at school, like don't bring stuff home to do, just leave it, go home and like work on something else, like do something fun, have like a nice meal, be with your family, work on mental health. Like I guess it's like that balance has like really saved me, rather than like staying so late and just being like totally consumed in the classroom.
I was going to say having kids is helpful in that, because then you kind of have to stop. You don't have a choice.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like, wait, your kids are not going to let you prepare. This was my problem before I had children. After I had children, I was like, okay, I can't work until midnight. It's not going to work. I was going to say about the make or break moments. There are two for me, and still are. One, my mentor when I was at Bank Street, she told me this, and it still helps me to this day, especially because I have a background in neuroscience. She said, you're not a teacher, you're a brain surgeon. Because think about it, you're changing their brains every day. They're making new connections, they're changing their mind about things, they're learning new things. Anything you're doing in the classroom, you're changing their brains. You're a brain surgeon. Changed my perception, especially because I have neuroscience background. I'm like, of course we are. We're just not poking them with sticks. We're poking them with very, very different things, but we are changing their brains every day. Even very little, that's still a change. And the second one is connected to that, but it actually, my husband, who is not an educator, who is an actor, who told me one day when I came home and I was in tears because the day just went awfully. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't think my kids are learning. My administrator sucks. Everything is just awful. And he was like, listen, think of one thing that you did today where your child reflected positively. And I said, okay, fine. There one thing happened and then everything else was just awful. You're not going to see changes in those kids the same day or the next day, or even at the end of the year. What's going to happen is they're going to learn the lessons that you're teaching them in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years, in 10 years. And it's going to matter later, not in the day, not in the moment, not even within the same year. And one of the examples of this came to me this summer when one of my kids, who I learned was actually a counselor at my daughter's camp. My daughter comes home and says, hey, Mikey was your student. I was like, that's right, he was my student. He told me you are the best science teacher ever. My jaw literally dropped on the floor, because the first year I was teaching him, I heard nothing but complaints from him and his family. And now I'm the best teacher ever. So you're making a difference. You might not know about it, but you are. That changes the whole perception.
Yeah, and I was thinking the same kind of thing. You're not going to see some successes immediately at all. So like she said, it might be years, it might be a month, it might be a week later. You're not in it for that immediate gratification. So don't expect it always, like that day getting pats on the back. Don't expect it. And you know what, not to lie, there's days when I'm like, oh, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. It was so hectic. Just know that everyone feels that way at times. But you just come in fresh the next day. Oh, today was better. And it's like, oh, you forget about yesterday was so bad. So just kind of having that fresh mindset every day, and when you go home at night, don't think about it. Like you can reflect on things and stuff, but don't think about the negativity. Kind of get something else to distract you, whether it's a TV show, your kids at home doing something, just to kind of reset yourself for the next day. Is really helpful. And then, like I said, if you have other options eventually, to the point when you're really at that level, don't leave the field. Just think of options within teaching, because it's always fine to move around within the districts or in the educational field. So we just don't want anyone to burn out, to have to leave education. You don't have to. So just kind of have that fresh mindset, start the next day, and have those other plans within the field. So maybe it's just not, after a while, it's not meant for you for that age group even. You might want to prefer high school versus elementary or vice versa. So finding also where you're feeling like you're not getting that burnout often is the best course of action before you end it.
Thank you. I see Aaliyah's hands up.
Yes, Amy, I really love what you said about going home and forget about this, because I'm the type that I have worked with kids before, and I'm the type that I'm just so caring to my kids that I'm always thinking about the problem of what happened. But literally, like exactly what you're saying, they forget about what happened. I asked my son today at school, what happened? He goes, oh, I don't know. We did math and then I don't know. So it's kind of good that you're saying that and giving a good perspective of just just forget about it, because it is a fresh start the next day. So I really want to thank you for reminding me that. Thank you.
It's an important lesson for sure. Like you said, some of the kids that had the worst day have the best day the next day, and that kind of lifts your spirits. So yeah, not harping on it that night, because believe me, it'll be a new day.
Oh yeah, and with growth mindset, we try to instill in our students the idea that mistakes are part of learning. You're not born knowing how to ride a bike, right? So you're not frustrated when that baby doesn't ride a bike already and talk. So with ourselves too, we're lifelong learners, always learning. Like we talked about in the beginning, we get a new job, we get a new position, or it's something small. It's just the new year, we get a new class, or it's after winter break. Everyone seems different now, right? Things are changing. We have to be just okay with that. If you go in with the mindset knowing that I'm going to learn a lot this year, it's very different than, oh, I didn't do all the things that Pinterest said I should have, right? Awesome.
It's very important, yeah. To
perspective, right?
Yes, and just like failures are a learning opportunity as well. If you feel like it was a really down day, just learn from it. Before you're getting that burnt out feeling, what can I do different that will make me feel like it was better? That reflection is important too.
And if you're not failing ever, did you try anything new? Because every time you try something new, it's not going to be perfect. So if you're not failing, then are you taking risks? Are you growing? So we should expect it and not necessarily think of it as failure. Yeah.
And that's why the lessons, like we were saying, they don't always go the way you planned it. But that's a learning opportunity. So don't think you're feeling don't put don't bring yourself down over those moments. Think of it as a learning opportunity.
It's not personal. It's collecting data. It's acting on the evidence, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
There's no perfect teacher. There's no perfect person, so we all are learning.
Absolutely. So let's think about, some of the rewarding parts. If you want to share any of the challenges, that's good, but we've kind of hit some of those. So what's something super rewarding that you feel keeps your heart warm and keeps you in the field?
I'll start with that one. So when I get cards or notes from staff members or students, it means the world to me. And so I usually pin them up on the board. But at the end of the school year, I'll get a file and label the year on it and stick them all in that file. And so I think, gosh, one day when I retire, that year, I'm just going to put every year and the cards to just remind me of the difference we make as educators. So that's very, very rewarding for me and something to look forward to.
I really like meeting with teachers and helping them overcome a challenge. I met with a teacher today who just graduated high school, started in college, and was placed to teach a middle school science class. She's not a scientist. She's not a science teacher. She's not a trained teacher. And she was very upfront with me today, literally at 8 o'clock in the morning. I had a meeting and she said, I'll be upfront. I was placed here because my parents thought that it was a good idea for me to teach while I'm attending college, and I'm teaching. I have no idea what I'm doing. We had a 2-hour meeting, and at the end, I felt that she was uplifted, that she she had some tools in her toolbox to step back into the classroom and to kind of do something, you know, about her lack of confidence of teaching and kind of feeling frustrated with the kids. And the reason I'm saying that, because for me, what was rewarding is that feeling of accomplishment, that I have helped someone overcome a challenge. And as a mentor, that is my accomplishment. I think that as a teacher, I have felt that accomplishment when I saw that, you know, that light bulb light up in a child's mind and say, oh, wow, I've learned something. I've learned something new. And that is the most rewarding thing for me, when I see somebody else understand that they can do it, that growth mindset, that ability, you know, I might not be able to do this now, but I'm going to try again tomorrow. And I'm going to try again the next day. And being able to give them that power, to give them that force, to keep them going, and to know that, you know, also kind of like a little bit of a attachment parenting kind of thing. Yeah, where like, I got your back. I'm not going to be there for you. I'm not going to be there instead of you, but I'm going to be right here. And I'm going to stand here with my hands like this. And if you fall, I got you. I got you. It's okay. And seeing that there's that connection it's everything for me.
I think another one of the most challenging parts of teaching behavior, you know, because, and I'm not saying behavior necessarily as in what we consider, you know, bad behavior, but just behavior in general. They're different. All the kids are different, and how they respond to learning. I know just this past week, I did a reading assessment. There was 60 words of sight words, and the student is very oppositional. You know, to say you have to do this right now. No, I'm not. Not going to do it. And so I could have looked at that as like a challenge, right? Like, okay, how am I going to be creative on this one? You know, there is no right or wrong way in teaching that they tell us in a book. Sometimes you're just thinking like in the spur of the moment, okay, what am I going to do? Okay, here's a behavior. Where am I going to go with this? You know, to get what I need, which is an assessment done. Having that objective in mind, what is the purpose of what I'm trying to do? Not getting fixated on how am I going to get it? What is the end point? I need this to be read. So, okay, tell me what is this word? What is it not? Because he was very oppositional. Well, it's not like, and it is the word like, you know, so I'm like, oh, okay, so it's not like. There's a check mark. Yep, he read that one. What is this word not? Well, it's not the, okay, not the. And then the whole list was, it's not this word. It's not this word, you know, but it's giving him that outlet of being oppositional kind of still, you know, like he doesn't want to do it, but I'm going to have him read. It was a challenge, and I could have saw it as like, well, you have to do this the right way. You have to read this. But, you know, taking those as like a challenge in itself of how am I going to do this? How am I going to get this read? You know, and just kind of seeing it as a success. You know what, even though it wasn't the traditional way if you just read through it, like, you know, like what we expect, point to it, say it, but taking that behavior and working with it to fit the needs of what is our objective. So you kind of have to have that objective of what each lesson, what are you trying to learn? What are you trying to teach? Clear, because you want to have the end point reached. How you get there is not always, you know, taught or the same. So just taking that creativity too, as like taking the behaviors that you have, all different, and working with them. And that can turn what could be a challenging thing into your success that day. So don't see these challenging behaviors as it stops anything from happening. You can still teach within that. So kind of looking at each individual student, like how can I work with this student or this student so I can get our goal done today, the objective done. They're still learning, they're still doing what I want, but not necessarily in the traditional form. And I think that's important to kind of not get stuck on memorizing the script that you're trying to read through, and, you know, don't be too laser pointed on the lesson itself. Think of what is the purpose for? And sometimes that's just the most rewarding, is working through what would be considered a challenge.
Any other rewards or challenges?
I'd like to add, like some of you have already pointed out, the most rewarding experiences that I've received have always been just observing that one student in a class who wanted to drop the class and felt they just couldn't make it until the end of the semester because of other hardships they were experiencing, and just being able to see that student successfully complete the class, or even observing students completing a certificate and then proceeding and moving forward with getting that degree and seeing their families is very rewarding for me to know that because of the hard work of that one student, the entire family will benefit from that hard work that student had demonstrated, and the impact that it will have on the community. And for me, that is the most rewarding.
Awesome, thank you. We're coming up to, I believe, our final question, and then we can open it to questions from our awesome audience for our wonderful educators here on our panel. And the final question is to share a piece of advice for someone who's starting on a pathway and making all those decisions about which way to go, because there's so many entry points to education. And remember that this session does end in just a little bit at 5:25. So it does not end at 5. All right, so any advice?
I would say don't give up. If you know you want to get into the profession, if I probably would have known at the beginning when I first started to be a teacher of how many years I would be in school, that might have scared me off, you know? So if you look at how many years, it might sound daunting, but just know, take each goal in stride. So like if your first step is just to get your BA, just look at what you need to do to accomplish that. Then go on to the next step. Finish that up, know how many classes you need to do, check them off as each semester goes, set your next goal. And then you might enjoy it so much, you just keep going with it, but don't look at the whole thing in itself. Just kind of take it in stride because it goes pretty fast. And just remember, like I said before, the more doors and opportunities you have, even if it takes a lot of years, it will benefit you for the long run too.
My piece of advice is to have a mentor, another colleague, another coworker, someone who knows. Mentorship is so important. Have a group of mentors. It doesn't have to be somebody experienced. It could be a peer mentor. It could be a family mentor. It could be someone from your college, but have a mentor. That's really important. Take those opportunities and really learn from them. Ask, collaborate. That's really important in becoming a new teacher and as a seasoned teacher as well. And also to know your positionality. Hopefully you're getting that in your teacher education, but where you are with your position, who you are, knowing who you are and where that takes you, and knowing your biases are very, very important.
I always share a quote that is very meaningful to me from a religious book, but I think it applies to a lot of situations, but teaching in particular. And I am going to paraphrase because I don't have it in front of me. But basically what it says is, do not be daunted by the enormity of the job in front of you, of the work in front of you. You are not required to finish the job, but neither are you free of starting it. You're not going to finish the education of your students. You're not going to finish your own education until the day that you cannot do it anymore. But you are not free as an educator, as a human being, you are not free from not starting the job. It's not, it should not be an excuse for any of us to say, I'm not going to be able to finish it, therefore I'm not going to start. Start somewhere, from 1 step to 2 steps to 3 steps. What we have in front of us, the state of education in our country, in the world, is not where it should be. We are there to make it better every day. We will not make it perfect, but it is our job to start somewhere to improve it. That's why I am so happy when I am reached out by people like Megan who say, can you share something? Can you talk to the people who are learning to be teachers, who are going to impart their education and their experience onto younger kids, and who are going to be the ones who are going to be, carrying this world on their shoulders. I always say yes, please, as many times as I can. We're contributing to this world through whatever it is that we're doing. Our job is incredibly important. We are not here to say we can't finish it, therefore we will not start.
Thank you, Catherine. That was nice. I feel like I really could use that too. So thank you for sharing that. I've been trying to think of like one piece of advice for, like where you guys are in your position right now, like of becoming new teachers. And I feel like what really helped me like throughout all of college and the years before I got my own class was just like keeping the reason, like the why, right? Like, so not necessarily the goal of like be a teacher, but more of like the why you want to be a teacher. So like the heart of it, I guess. So a lot of things I would always think of is like, I volunteered a lot like during high school and my first few years of college in elementary classrooms. And so I just had a bunch of cute little memories of like building relationships with the little kindergartners and reading to them, and like the aha moments and all these like cute memories, or of like babysitting when I was a teenager, and just like kind of my reason, like my why to be a teacher. And I kind of just kept that in my back pocket, like anytime classes got really hard, or I was like, geez, I have like 4 years left of, because I didn't decide I wanted to be a teacher until like 2 years into college. So I was in college for like 6 or 7 years. And so when I was like, geez, it seems so far away, like maybe I shouldn't do this because it's just going to be so much time, I always kept my why in front of me, of like, just like the love and the passion that I had for helping kids learn and grow and become the best that they can be. And that really helped me like stick through it in the hard times leading up to becoming a teacher. So I would say maybe like take some time, think about your why, like why do you really want it? And then keep that as like your fuel and your motivation to keep going.
These are such great pieces of advice. Elvia, were you going to share?
Yes, I'd like to add something that Valerie made reference to, and that is consider volunteering. I know most know about the teacher's work schedule. You have the summers off, and consider volunteering during the summer offs, whether that be at summer camps, whether that be working with a new grade level as a substitute, or coming in as maybe an intern, because sometimes these volunteer experiences lead to work experiences that lead to job opportunities. And at the same time, you're learning in your work with perhaps different age groups. You're learning about all the different types of lesson plans that are out there, in addition to learning from more seasoned teachers or individuals in the field of education. And all of this that you gather can only make you a stronger educator. Something to think about when those months of summer come around. I have to say that as I reflect in my years of teaching, I don't think I've ever really had a true summer off, because I've always been that person that would take on new projects, whether that be for a volunteer experience or a paid experience. And from that, it leads to new projects, and which is what keeps me going. And again, it's just constantly reinventing yourself and being innovative and trying new things is what I love about teaching. So if I to share one advice to aspiring educators is to consider using some of that summertime when you're not taking college classes or involved in other training to try new programs that are out there.
Yes, it's wonderful to get any experience with kids, right, on your pathway, boost that resume and get new experiences, different grade levels. And once you have your bachelor's degree in basic skills in California, substitute teaching. Test out all the different grades and subject areas, right, for those that are undecided especially.
Mm-hmm. And even, don't forget summer camps. You get experiences working with a diverse, diversity in with families and young children, and you learn so much. You can never stop learning.
Could I chime in about that for just a second?
Hi.
Elvia, I love that you just said summer camps. I started as a camp counselor when I was 16 years old because I wanted a job that was just for the summer. I had the luxury of not having to work while I was in high school during the school year, but I wanted to make as much money as I could during the summer. I am still friends with people that I was a camp counselor with over 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. I've had the opportunity to see some of my students who were with me as children in the camp turn into young adults. I mean, it's just, and I learned so many skills that like nobody can teach you. And so I love, and plus I made money. So I love that you said, because a lot of us start in extended care, we start after school care, we start as camp counselors. And so it's so important to say that. So thank you.
Someone was asking in the chat about substitute teaching. So usually the requirement in California tends to be a bachelor's degree and then the basic skills requirement. You may have heard that although CBEST was one of the most common ways in the past that students would meet basic skills, now we have a new provision allowing for coursework to meet basic skills too, and you can mix and match. However, due to the huge crisis in education with a substitute teacher shortage, bus driver shortage, and teacher shortage, some districts have lowered that requirement from finishing a BA to being about 3/4 done and finishing, in progress with that bachelor's degree. So yeah, work experience, look at your college or university or community college or high school for internship opportunities. Another session today mentioned the need, or was it this one? I'm already stuck. The really great benefit of going to your campus career center.
I started off as a special education assistant for LA Unified. And that also gave me the experience to know that I did want to teach special education. And I worked in the gen ed classes as well with some of the special ed students. So it does open up a whole new world of what age groups you feel more comfortable with too when you get a job into a school before you even become a teacher. And it does add to your experience too. And it kind of makes you more familiar with which kind of degree do you want or credential do you want and what kind of classroom program you want to teach. If you can get a job even as in a school district while you're going to school, it is great experience as well.
I also wanted to add that private schools have lower requirements for substitute teaching. And sometimes you can go and teach art or music or, classes that don't require you to work full time. That's also a great way to get your experience with different grades. Their requirement usually is to pass FBI clearance, and that's what they require for you to be able to work on campus. Of course, COVID-19 changed a lot of things in terms of being able to access campus, but private schools usually have lower requirements as far as credentials and passing degrees and all of that thing. So if you do want to get an experience, that's one way that you could go. So Jewish schools, Catholic schools, all of those schools, private ones.
As we come to the close of our session, let's have a moment for a final word. Any last things that maybe weren't part of the questions that we have, and anyone would like to start? And we, of course, want folks to enter questions into the chat because we'll have an opportunity for Q&A too.
I just want to say a moment and thank you all. I know education probably has not been the best during the pandemic, but I don't know where you guys are all at, but just thank you just for being educators and thank you for sticking around. I know the pandemic has really caused a lot of teacher burnout. A lot of them left the profession where they're just like, no, but here you guys are. And it's nice to see that because, I deal with college students. I also deal with a variety of university students where it's just like, well, after all this, do I want to go into the profession? And you guys just reminded me of just like, takes me to my teaching philosophy that goes like, why I want to go into teaching. And you guys just motivated me. And I felt like I needed that right now. Thank you so much.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. That's really sweet. I'm glad.
I put an essential question in the chat box. I hope you don't mind me checking in. But as far as I know, there's a lot of school districts that are counting down to this Friday. Hopefully you guys are all in this situation. But I know my own children, their school wraps on Friday and they have the entire week off next week. So as things have gotten hard this week, I've reminded them, just imagine yourself 1 week from today where you're going to be. And it's been helping. So I'm curious, what's everybody doing? Oh, Jackie, you're studying. Hopefully it's something good. But what are people doing next week?
Hopefully not much. I'm looking forward to kind of just the time off and staying at home and getting caught up with a lot of stuff I don't have time for right now on whole days off. Plus, it'll be nice, by the first couple days, you feel relaxed like you're on vacation, then I'll be all ready for Thanksgiving.
I have a hammock and I have 2 trees out front and I'm just gonna put it between the trees, nap outside. I'm really stoked to nap. So it's gonna be really awesome. I'm really looking forward to it.
But I promise you we're not burnt out. We just need a rest. Sounds good.
That's literally what people in the field are saying. They're saying, I'm not burnt, I'm just tired right now. I'm just really tired.
It's like the end of the school year. I remember being in a cocoon for a week, just catching up on sleep. It's so different with college students in my experience than when I was with the little ones in elementary school, middle school, high school. Oh my goodness. Well, this has been just amazing to have such a diverse group of experiences and expertise, teachers still working on their education and training, teachers giving their time as mentors, coordinators, and to the big and littles out there all the way up to college. So we have some fantastic panelists, and I know some of them are going to be sharing their email in the chat with anyone who might like to connect or have more questions. So do look there, and don't forget, before I sign off with you, the conference is not over yet. We do have a conference wrap up. Correct me, it's 6:30 p.m. So there's a nice break for dinner, and we hope to see a lot of you at the final session. So goodness, what a great group. Would anyone for the recording like to also share their contact information?
Also, I think, did Christy's question get answered? I just know that there was another question in there about deaf and hard of hearing.
Oh, wonderful. Please do answer. I have not yet checked the chat and was going to soon. So thank you. But the question is to teach, is it this one, to teach English in high school, either deaf or hard of hearing students and or hearing students, do I need a specialist degree? I was planning to get single subject English and adaptive kinesiology to also coach. Do any of our panelists know? In my knowledge, you would need specialized training. I believe there is a credential for deaf, hard of hearing. It's different than the mild, moderate, severe credential pathways. And I recently did hear that the education specialist credentials are currently being reworked by the CTC and are expected to be revised shortly.
Oh.
Can anyone add to that? I'm not positive, you know.
I have a little to add. I know of somebody who is a general ed elementary school teacher who is fully bilingual in ASL. And so whenever the district has students that want a push-in inclusion model for deaf and hard of hearing children, they always put them in her classroom, even though she doesn't have a special ed credential. So I'm not sure if maybe it's written in the IEPs. So I believe Christy would have to get a special ed credential, but honestly, there's such a shift in special ed with a push-in inclusion model versus bringing the kids into a separate classroom on their own. So it's kind of a blending of gen ed and special ed. And so Christy, if you're not like getting your degree right this minute, like just wait a little bit, because I think there's going to be some changes coming soon, and changes that will simplify things for everyone. That's the good thing. The changes that are happening are meant to simplify, and there's going to be more coming.
Yes, really great news.
I think the meshing of the gen ed and special ed credentials, right? Like they're trying to kind of be more inclusive.
Yeah. So for example, I know Cal State Long Beach has the credential for general ed and education specialist called the Urban Dual Credential. And you end up finishing both at the end of your program, and you're in a cohort. However, that's not necessarily the deaf, hard of hearing type credential. I think it might be moderate, severe, or mild, moderate or something. Well, we are just so lucky to have a wonderful panel. I'm so appreciative of everyone for joining us this evening. Hope to see a lot of you at the 6:30 session. It's going to be a closing session for the Teach LA conference. And so Renee is going to be co-leading that, and there's a little registration. We hope to see you there. There will be an opportunity drawing too. So goodness, thank you everybody for coming with us. This recording will be posted shortly to the Teach LA YouTube channel and the CCCTPP website. So we look forward to seeing some of you at 6:30. Keep in touch. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Megan. There's also a Questa session that's in process right now. I'm going to put the link in the chat. If anybody wants to just keep going, we've got something. One of our partners is doing a session right now.
That's right.
For a little bit.
Yes, that session did start at 5. So yeah, you'll get the good stuff. It's not too far in. Thanks
we have
again.
like a little overlap, so we're making it work. Thanks so much, Megan, for your leadership.
Thank you.
Wonderful seeing everyone.
Bye. Thank you and good night.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Have a good
Bye. Thank you.